Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the world no longer exists.
Just gone.
That almost happened. And no, not because of aliens, not because of a massive meteor, not because of some deadly world-ending virus. It happened because two countries came closer to outright nuclear war than most people even realize. For 13 terrifying days, one wrong decision, one misunderstood message, or honestly, just one nervous soldier could have ended modern civilization. So how exactly did humanity survive? And just how close were we really to the end? Let's find out. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, A Rivalry is Born, the Aftermath of World War II. To really understand how we got to the absolute brink, we've got to look at the world right after World War II. The dust had barely settled, and two major superpowers had emerged from the rubble, the United States and the Soviet Union. But instead of sending armies directly at one another, these two heavyweights competed through high-stakes politics, frantic technological races, deep cover espionage, and the terrifying accumulation of nuclear weapons. It was essentially this massive ideological chess match, pitting Western political structures against a rapidly expanding communist state, with the entire globe serving as the board. And the stakes of this rivalry, they grew incredibly fast. The colossal, devastating power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima back in August 1945 essentially kick-started this entire standoff. By 1947, you have the Truman Doctrine establishing a firm U.S. policy of anti-communist interventionism. And this escalating friction literally carved up nations. I mean, Germany was divided into distinct occupation zones by 1949, which led to massive logistical operations like the 1948 Berlin airlift, where American and British pilots flew over 2.3 million tons of supplies into West Berlin just to break a Soviet blockade. The lines were definitely being drawn. Which brings us to Part 2, the escalating arms race, paranoia, and ducking cover. As the weapons grew more powerful, an unprecedented wave of anxiety just washed over the citizens of both nations. People were suddenly living under this invisible ticking clock of the atomic age. Stop and ask yourself for a second, what would you do if enemy missiles suddenly appeared just minutes away from your country? Imagine going to work, sending your kids to school, knowing that at literally any second, a siren could wail, signaling the end of everything you know. That wasn't a movie plot, that was the daily reality for millions of people. This era of paranoia seeped into every single corner of society. The Manhattan Project's earlier Trinity test had already proven the devastating, lingering effects of radioactive fallout. So in response to the growing threat, military intelligence kicked into absolute overdrive, developing these radical top-secret spy planes like the U-2 out at Area 51. In schools, kids practiced duck and cover drills, a comically simple, almost heartbreaking strategy for surviving an atomic blast. The psychological war was so intense that in 1954, the United States even added the words "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance, specifically to counter state-sponsored communist ideology. The tension was winding tighter and tighter. Then, in October 1962, everything changed. Part 3, 13 Days of Terror, the Cuban Missile Crisis. 13. For 13 harrowing days, the entire world practically held its breath. A massive political and military standoff erupted over the sudden installation of nuclear-armed Soviet missiles in Cuba. That is just 90 miles off the coast of the United States. But, this didn't just happen in a vacuum. The powder keg had been filling for years. In May 1960, the USSR shot down an American U-2 spy plane and captured the pilot, creating a huge diplomatic crisis. Then, in August 1961, Berlin literally wakes up to find their city divided overnight by a barbed wire wall. So by October 1962, when US intelligence finally discovered those Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, the global stage was already completely set for a devastating explosion. The pressure on leaders from both sides was just unimaginable. Every passing hour increased the risk of all-out war. Inside the Situation Rooms, the tension was palpable. The military wanted immediate action, but one decision changed everything. Instead of an immediate airstrike, which almost certainly would have triggered a nuclear response, they went with a naval blockade. This opened up a razor-thin window for frantic, back-channel negotiations that ultimately saw the missiles removed. Part 4. Glitches and False Alarms, when computers nearly ended the world. Look, deliberate diplomacy barely saved us in 1962, but intentional decisions weren't the only things risking human civilization. Sometimes, the threat was just a simple machine error. Fast forward to November 9, 1979.
Technicians at NORAD suddenly receive an urgent, blindingly clear alert. The Soviets have launched a massive missile strike at North America. The U.S. air defense program immediately springs into action, preparing a full-scale retaliatory nuclear attack. The clock is literally ticking down to the end of the world. But at the absolute last possible second, technicians frantically trace the data and discover it was a false alarm, a computer glitch. A simple machine error almost triggered mutually assured destruction. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying vulnerability of the era. The 1986 Chernobyl disaster proved this point all too well. What started as a routine safety test at one of the most powerful machines ever built quickly spiraled out of control. Underlying design flaws were exposed under the exact wrong conditions, colliding with a cascade of catastrophic human mistakes. The resulting explosion released radiation into the environment, equivalent to getting 1,000 chest X-rays all at once. It was a stark reminder that even without malicious intent, complex systems and human error during the Cold War could easily spiral into an apocalyptic scenario.
Let's move on to part 5, the power of diplomacy and de-escalating the standoff. Thankfully, humanity did not end in radioactive fire, because for all of the glitches, the paranoia, and the massive stockpiles of weapons, human beings eventually chose to talk. Leaders deliberately began to shift the dynamic. In 1972, President Nixon made a historic visit to China, which substantially altered the global balance of power between the US, China, and the Soviet Union. A decade and a half later, President Reagan stood in a divided Germany and delivered his pivotal Tear Down This Wall speech, reflecting a massive shift as Soviet reforms really gained momentum. And finally, on November 9, 1989, the barrier that had symbolized a fractured world, the Berlin Wall, officially fell. The standoff was easing, not through the firing of a nuclear weapon, but through shifting politics and persistent negotiation. If we take away anything from this explainer today, it is this: communication and diplomacy are often the absolute only things standing between humanity and annihilation. In our modern world, where incredibly complex systems still govern global security, the lessons of the Cold War are honestly more relevant than ever. History isn't just about the past. Sometimes it's the reason we're still here today. If this story surprised you, there are so many more moments in history that changed the world in ways most people never even learn about. Subscribe to Chronicles of Humanity and join us as we uncover the stories that shaped civilization, one extraordinary chapter at a time. And hey, before you go, tell me in the comments, which moment in history do you think came closest to changing the world forever? I read every single comment, and your answer might just inspire our next explainer documentary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.